The invitation had been sitting on the kitchen counter for 3 days, and Eleanor had picked it up at least a dozen times, running her thumb over the embossed lettering as if the texture might tell her something the words did not. It was heavy stock, cream-colored with a gold border, the kind of stationery that cost more per sheet than she spent on her weekly groceries. She had never received anything quite so formal from her son before, and that alone should have given her pause, but Eleanor was not a woman who paused. She was a woman who moved forward, who smoothed things over, who made excuses for the people she loved. She had been doing it for so long that it had become as natural as breathing. She had raised Derek alone after his father walked out when the boy was 7. There had been no child support, no alimony, no safety net. She had worked double shifts at the hospital cafeteria during the week and cleaned houses on the weekends. She had skipped meals so Derek could have new sneakers for school. She had let her own dreams of nursing school dissolve into the background noise of survival. And she had never complained. Not once. When Derek had announced he was getting married at 23, Eleanor had smiled and offered to pay for the rehearsal dinner. When he and Patricia had bought their first house, Eleanor had dipped into her retirement fund to help with the down payment. When the grandchildren came, she had knitted blankets and sent checks and driven 2 hours each way to babysit, always waiting for an invitation that came less and less frequently as the years went by. She had told herself it was fine. They were busy. They had their own lives. She was not the center of their world, and she should not expect to be. She had her small house, her garden, her quiet routines. She had learned to be content with the crumbs they threw her. But the crumbs had grown smaller over time. The phone calls had gone from weekly to monthly to barely at all. The holiday invitations had become perfunctory, often delivered with an excuse already attached. Derek was traveling for work. Patricia's family had made other plans. The children were overwhelmed with activities. Eleanor had heard them all, and she had accepted them all, because what else could she do? She had tried to be grateful for what she got. A birthday card with a gift card inside. A brief visit on Christmas afternoon, always rushed, always with one eye on the clock. A text message on Mother's Day that felt more like obligation than affection. She had saved every card, every note, every small token of their attention, because they were all she had done, but the dinner party invitation had felt different. It had arrived with a handwritten note from Patricia, something she had never done before. "We would be so honored to have you join us," it said. "It means the world to Derek to have you there." Eleanor had read those words again and again, letting them warm a part of her she had thought had gone cold. She had bought a new dress for the occasion. Navy blue, 3/4 sleeves, a modest neckline. It was not expensive, but it was elegant in a quiet way. She had spent an afternoon at the mall, something she rarely did, walking through the department stores and trying on dresses until she found the one that felt right. She had bought new shoes to go with it, sensible heels that would not hurt her feet. She had even treated herself to a haircut at the salon in the strip mall, the one she visited every 6 weeks out of habit. She had prepared herself for the evening with a care that bordered on ritual. She had laid the dress out on her bed that morning, smoothing out every wrinkle. She had polished her silver bracelet, the one Derek had given her for her 60th birthday, the last gift he had ever given her that did not come from a catalog. She had packed her good purse with her reading glasses, her lipstick, and a small emergency sewing kit, just in case. She had not expected the text message. She had not prepared for it. It came at 4 o'clock, 2 hours before she needed to leave. She was in the kitchen, checking the time on her phone, when his name appeared on the screen. She had smiled when she saw it. He was thinking of her. He was confirming the details. He was making sure she was coming. That the message read, "Don't come. The headcount is final." Eleanor had read it once, then twice, then a third time. She had stood in her kitchen, the afternoon light slanting through the window and falling across the counter where she had placed the invitation. She had read the words until they stopped making sense. She had waited for another text, an explanation, a clarification, a call that would come through with a laugh and a correction. But nothing came. Her phone stayed dark and silent as she had tried to call him. The call went straight to voicemail. She had tried Patricia, and the phone rang twice before it was declined. She had sat at her kitchen table for a full hour, the phone in her hand, the invitation still on the counter where she had left it. She had thought about the dress on her bed. She had thought about the shoes. She had thought about the careful note she had written back, the one that said she would be delighted to attend. She had not cried. She had not yelled. She had simply sat there, feeling something hollow open up in her chest. It was not a new feeling. It was old and familiar. The same ache she had felt every time they had canceled a holiday visit, every time a promised call never came, every time she had been the last thing on their minds, but this time felt different. This time it felt deliberate. This time it felt like they had opened the door just wide enough for her to see what was on the other side, and then slammed it shut. She had put the dress back in the closet. She had hung it carefully, smoothing out the folds. She had taken off the silver bracelet and placed it back in her jewelry box. She had made herself a cup of tea and drank it cold, because she had forgotten to take a sip. At 6 o'clock, she received a notification on her phone. It was a post on Patricia's social media account. A photograph of the dining table set with fine china and crystal glasses. The caption read, "So blessed to have our closest friends and family here to celebrate Derek's achievement. What a night to remember." Eleanor had zoomed in on the photograph. She had looked at every face around the table. There was Patricia's sister, Margaret, who lived 3 states away and had flown in for the occasion. There was Derek's college roommate, who he had not seen in years. There were other faces she did not recognize, younger and more polished, dressed in clothes that cost more than her monthly mortgage. There was no empty chair. She had sat in the darkening kitchen and let the weight of it settle over her. She had thought about the years of giving, the years of excusing, the years of telling herself that her patience would pay off in the end. She had thought about the retirement fund she had drained for their down payment. She had thought about the loans she had given them over the years, the ones that were never mentioned again. She had thought about the babysitting and the gifts and the quiet, endless hoping that her family would eventually see her as something more than a resource. But she was not a resource. She was a mother. She was a grandmother. She was a woman who had given everything she had and asked for almost nothing in return. And this was what it had bought her. A text message. A photograph. A seat at a table that had never really been set for her. She had not responded to the post. She had not called or texted or done anything. She had simply gone to bed early that night, and she had slept a dreamless sleep, and she had woken up in the morning with a quiet clarity she had not felt in years. She was done. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. She was done in the way a woman is done when she finally understands that waiting is not the same as being patient. She had been waiting her whole life for something that was never going to come. She had been waiting for Derek to see her, to value her, to choose her. But he had already chosen. He had chosen his wife, his business, his friends. He had chosen the people who could help him rise, not the mother who had helped him stand. And that was fine. That was his choice. But it did not mean she had to keep waiting. She had started making plans that morning. She had called her accountant, an efficient woman named Margaret, and had asked for a full accounting of her assets. She had looked at the numbers with fresh eyes, seeing them not as a safety net for Derek, but as the foundation of her own future. She had the coastal property, the one she had inherited from her aunt years ago. She had the savings account she had built quietly, the one Derek did not know about. She had investments that had grown steadily in the background while she lived modestly and asked for nothing. She had decided to move, not to run away, but to walk toward something new. She would leave the city where she had raised her son, the house where she had spent decades waiting for visits that never came. She would go to the coast, to her aunt's old house, and she would start over. She would build a life that was her own. A life that did not revolve around Derek's needs or Patricia's schedules or anyone else's expectations that she had not told them. She had not called or emailed or sent any kind of explanation. She had simply packed her essentials, donated the rest, and sold the house to a young couple who were thrilled to find something affordable in the neighborhood. The closing had been quick and quiet. She had signed the papers without any emotion she could name. She had driven to the coast the next day, her car packed with boxes and suitcases. She had not looked back. She had not checked her phone. She had simply driven, the highway stretching out ahead of her, the ocean getting closer with every mile. The house was just as she remembered it, worn and weathered but solid. The white paint was peeling in places, and the porch needed work, but the windows were large and the light was beautiful. The ocean was visible over the dunes, a blue-gray expanse that seemed to go on forever. She had spent the first week cleaning and organizing. She had swept out the dust, aired out the rooms, and started making the space her own. She had bought paint and brushes and had begun sanding down the porch railing. She had replaced the old door handle. She had fixed the leaky faucet in the kitchen. The work was good for her hands and her mind. It kept her from thinking too much about the text message, the dinner party, the photograph that had made it all so clear. But the thinking came anyway. It came at night, when the house was quiet and the waves were the only sound. It came as she lay in her aunt's old bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the years of small hurts and larger betrayals. She had been so patient. She had been so understanding. She had been so willing to overlook every slight, every cancellation, every whispered excuse. And what had it gotten her? She had not expected Derek to call. She had not expected him to apologize. She had not expected anything from him at all. But she had expected, somewhere deep in her heart, that he would eventually notice her absence. That he would eventually wonder where she had gone. Weeks passed. The letters started arriving at the old house, forwarded to her new address by the postal service. She had seen Derek's handwriting on the envelopes and had set them aside. She had not opened them. She had not been ready to hear whatever he had to say. But the letters kept coming, and she had finally opened the first one. It was brief and businesslike. He said he had been trying to reach her. He said he was concerned. He said he had gone to her old house and found it sold. He asked where she was and if she was okay. She had read the letter twice and had felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not relief. Just a strange, distant awareness that he had finally noticed she was gone. She had not responded. She had put the letter in a drawer with the others and had gone back to her work on the porch. The second letter was longer and more desperate. Derek said he had been worried sick. He said he had called her phone multiple times. He said Patricia was concerned too. He said he needed to know she was safe. She had read that one and had thought about the dinner party. She had thought about the photograph. She had thought about all the years of being the last thing on their minds. She had still not responded. The third letter came with a handwritten note from Patricia. Eleanor had recognized the looping script. "We have no idea what has happened or why you have decided to cut off contact," Patricia had written. "Derek is beside himself. Family is too important to let misunderstandings grow." Misunderstandings. The word had made Eleanor smile, a small wry smile. There was no misunderstanding. There was a text message. There was a photograph. There was a long history of being taken for granted. That was not a misunderstanding. That was a pattern. She had put Patricia's letter in the drawer with the others and had not thought about it again. And then the voice message had come. It was late, after midnight, and Eleanor had been in bed when her phone buzzed. She had let it go to voicemail, and she had listened to it the next morning, over her coffee. Derek's voice was strained and anxious, nothing like the confident businessman he presented to the world. He said he needed to talk to her. He said there was something urgent. He said it was about a loan he had taken out years ago, a loan for which she had signed as a guarantor. He said the bank was threatening to call it in, and if they did, she would be personally liable. He said he was in trouble, and he needed her help. Eleanor had listened to the message twice. She had thought about the guarantee she had signed. The one Derek had told her was just a formality. She had thought about the years of giving, the loans and the down payments and the gifts. She had thought about the retirement fund she had drained for him, the savings she had sacrificed, the quiet, endless hope that she was investing in a future that would include her. She had set down her coffee cup and had walked out onto the porch. The ocean was calm that morning, a soft roll of waves against the shore. The sun was rising, and the light was golden on the water. She had stood there, feeling the warmth on her face, and she had made a decision that she would protect herself. She would not let Derek drag her down with him. She had spent a lifetime giving to him, and he had given her nothing in return but a text message and a canceled dinner party. She was not going to sacrifice her peace, her home, her future for a man who had never sacrificed anything for her. She had called her accountant and her lawyer that morning. She had explained the situation, and they had both advised caution. The guarantee was binding, they said, but there were ways to protect her assets. She could transfer the coastal property into a trust. She could negotiate with the bank. She could make a settlement offer that she had not called Derek back. She had not responded to any of his messages. She had let him stew in his own anxiety, and she had focused on her own future. But she knew this was only the beginning. Derek would not give up easily. He was desperate, and desperate people did desperate things. He would push. He would manipulate. He would try to make her feel guilty, because guilt had always been his most effective weapon against her. She was ready for it. She had spent a lifetime feeling guilty for every failure, every shortcoming, every moment she had put herself first. She was not going to feel guilty anymore. She walked back inside and sat down at the kitchen table. She pulled out her journal, the one she had started keeping since she arrived at the coast. She wrote slowly, carefully, letting the words form in her mind before they touched the page. I am not a resource. I am not a safety net. I am not a backup plan. I am a woman who has given everything to her family and received almost nothing in return. That ends now. She closed the journal and looked out the window. The ocean was still there, steady and eternal. It would be there tomorrow and the day after that and for as long as she needed it. It did not ask anything of her. It did not demand her attention or her sacrifice. It was just there, a silent reminder that there was a world beyond Derek's needs and Patricia's demands. She would not be pushed. She would not be manipulated. She would not be made to feel guilty for protecting herself. She would wait. She would let Derek come to her. And when he did, she would be ready. The sun was setting, and the sky was beginning to turn shades of pink and orange. Eleanor sat on the porch and watched the colors shift and deepen. She had never been good at sitting still, but she was learning. She was learning to be still, to be patient, to wait for the moment when she could finally say the words she had never been able to say. That she was not done. She was just beginning. The waves rolled in and out, steady and eternal. She watched them until the light faded and the stars came out. She did not check her phone. She did not wonder what Derek was doing or thinking. She just sat there in the quiet and let herself be. She thought about the dinner party, the text message, the empty chair. She thought about all the years of giving and receiving so little in return. She thought about the guarantee she had signed, the loan that was now threatening everything she had built. She thought about what she would say when Derek finally came. And she smiled. The knock came on a Tuesday morning, just as Eleanor was finishing her second cup of coffee. She had been sitting at the kitchen table, the window open to let in the salt air, her journal open in front of her. She had been writing about the garden she wanted to plant, the roses she remembered from her aunt's time, the lavender she thought might thrive in the sandy soil. She had been thinking about small things, quiet things, the kind of thoughts that had become precious to her in the weeks since she had arrived. The knock was not tentative. It was firm, insistent, the kind of knock that expected to be answered. Eleanor recognized it before she even stood up. It was the knock of a man who had never once had to wait for anything in his life. That she set down her pen and closed the journal. She walked to the door slowly, not out of hesitation, but out of a deliberate refusal to be rushed. She opened it, and there he was. Derek stood on her porch, looking thinner than she remembered. His suit was expensive but rumpled, as if he had been wearing it for days. His eyes were bloodshot, and there were dark circles beneath them. He looked like a man who had not slept well in a very long time. "Mother," he said. His voice was tight, controlled. The voice he used in business meetings, she thought. The one he used when he was trying to close a deal. "Derek," she said. She did not step aside to let him in. She stood in the doorway, her hand on the frame, and looked at him. "Can I come in?" he asked. He tried to smile, but it did not reach his eyes. "It's a long drive. I could use a glass of water." Eleanor looked at him for a long moment. She thought about the text message. She thought about the dinner party. She thought about the photograph Patricia had posted, the one with all the faces and no empty chair. She thought about the years of canceled plans and broken promises. Then she stepped aside and held the door open. Derek walked into the house, his eyes scanning the room as if he were appraising it. Eleanor watched him take in the modest furniture, the pottery on the counter, the flowers she had picked from the dunes. He did not say anything, but she could see him calculating, trying to figure out how she was living, what she had, what she might be willing to give. "Sit down," she said. She gestured to the kitchen table. "I'll get you some water." She filled a glass from the tap and set it in front of him. He sat down heavily, as if the weight of the world were pressing on his shoulders. Eleanor sat across from him and waited. "Mother," he said again. He took a sip of water and set the glass down. "I need to talk to you about something important." "I assumed as much," she said. "You didn't drive 3 hours for a social call." He flinched. It was a small flinch, barely noticeable, but Eleanor saw it. She had been watching him for decades. She knew every micro-expression, every shift in his posture, every tell that, "I know I haven't been the best son," he said. "I know I've been distant. I know there have been times when I let you down. But I'm here now. I'm trying." Eleanor said nothing. She waited. "The loan," he said. "The one you signed for. It's in trouble. The bank is calling it in. If I don't come up with the money, they're going to come after you. They'll take the house. They'll take your savings. They'll take everything." Eleanor listened. She had known this was coming. She had been preparing for it. But hearing him say the words aloud was still something that... "How much?" she asked. Derek paused. He looked at his hands. "The total outstanding balance is just over 300,000. I've tried to negotiate, but they're not willing to work with me. They want it all, and they want it now." Eleanor did not react. She kept her face still, her hands folded on the table in front of her. "I need your help, Mother," Derek said. "I need you to sell this house. I need you to liquidate your investments. I need you to give me whatever you have. It's the only way." Eleanor looked at him. She thought about the house she was sitting in, the house her aunt had left her. She thought about the investments she had built quietly over the years. She thought about the retirement fund she had drained for his down payment, the savings she had given him for his business, the gifts and loans and sacrifices she had made without ever asking for anything in return. She thought about the text message that, "I can't do that," she said. Derek's face went still. "What? I can't sell this house. I can't liquidate my investments. I can't give you what I don't have." "But you do have it," he said. His voice was rising, a note of panic creeping in. "I've seen the paperwork. I know what you've got. It's enough to cover this." "Enough to cover this," she repeated. "And then what happens next time? What happens when the next loan goes bad? What happens when you need another down payment? Another gift, another sacrifice?" "Mother, that's not fair." "No," she said. "It's not. But neither was the text message. Neither was the dinner party. Neither were all the years I spent waiting for you to see me as something more than a bank account." Derek's face went red. "That's not how it is. That's not how I see you." "How do you see me, Derek?" He opened his mouth and closed it. He looked like a man who had been asked a question he had never considered. "I see you as my mother," he said finally. "I love you." Eleanor nodded slowly. She felt a sad ache in her chest, the old familiar pain. But it was softer now, more distant. It did not have the power to make her crumble. "I love you too," she said. "But love isn't the same as obligation. And I'm done being obligated." Derek stared at her. He was not used to being told no. He was not used to hearing the word from her. She had always been the one who said yes. Yes to the down payment. Yes to the loan guarantee. Yes to every request, every demand, every expectation. "Please," he said. His voice cracked. "I'm begging you. If I lose this, I lose everything. The business. The house. Patricia. The kids. I'll have nothing." Eleanor looked at him. She saw the desperation in his eyes. She saw the fear. She saw the man she had raised, the man she had sacrificed so much for. And she felt something she had never felt before in his presence. She felt calm. "You should have told me about this sooner," she said. "You should have told me when the trouble started. You should have been honest with me from the beginning. Instead, you waited until the last minute, and then you texted me to stay away. I didn't want to worry you." "Didn't want to worry me," Eleanor repeated. "Or didn't want me to know." Derek looked away. He could not meet her eyes. "I'm not going to give you the money," she said. "I'm not going to sell this house. I'm not going to liquidate my investments. But I am going to help you." He looked up. "How?" "I'm going to talk to the bank. I'm going to negotiate. I'm going to see if there's a way to restructure the loan to buy us some time. But the money I have, the house I live in, the savings I've built, those are mine. They're not yours. They're not a safety net for your mistakes." Derek stared at her. He looked like he was trying to decide whether to argue or to beg. Mother, I don't understand. Why won't you just help me? I am helping you, she said. But I'm not going to enable you. I've been enabling you your whole life, and it hasn't helped either of us. You need to learn to stand on your own. You need to learn to fix your own problems. Derek stood up abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor. You're my mother. You're supposed to be there for me. I have been there for you, Eleanor said. I've been there for you every single time you've asked. And what have you been there for me? He had no answer. He stood there, breathing hard, his fists clenched at his sides. Nothing, Eleanor said. You've given me nothing. Not your time. Not your attention. Not even a seat at your dinner table. That was Patricia's fault, he said. She organized the guest list. She sent the invitations. She made the decisions. Eleanor shook her head slowly. No. You made the decisions. You sent the text. You chose not to call. You chose not to explain. You have always chosen not to explain. Derek opened his mouth, but no words came out. I'm not going to make this easy for you, Eleanor said. I'm not going to fix everything with a check. But I am going to help you figure out how to fix it yourself. That's what a real parent does. That's what I should have been doing all along. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the framed. I'll be in touch, he said. About the bank. About the loan. Eleanor nodded. I'll be here. He left. She watched him walk to his car, a sleek black sedan that cost more than she had ever spent on a vehicle in her life. He got in and sat there for a long moment, his head bowed, his hands on the steering wheel. Then he started the engine and drove away. Eleanor closed the door and leaned against it. She felt tired, the deep tiredness of a woman who had just done something she had never done before. She had said no. She had set a boundary. She had refused to be the safety net. That she walked to the kitchen table and sat down. She opened her journal and picked up her pen. She wrote slowly, carefully. I said no. I told him I would help, but I would not enable. I told him I would negotiate with the bank, but I would not give him the money. He didn't understand. He was angry, but I held my ground. She paused. She looked out the window at the ocean. I am not sure if he will ever forgive me. I am not sure if he will ever understand, but I am sure that I did the right thing. I am sure that I am finally learning to stand up for myself. She closed the journal and set it aside. She walked out onto the porch and sat down in her usual chair. The waves were rolling in, steady and eternal. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. She thought about the meeting with Derek. She thought about the look on his face when she said no. She thought about the years of giving and the moment she had finally stopped. She had not closed the door on him. She had not cut him out of her life. She had just made it clear that she was no longer going to be the one who always gave. She was no longer going to be the one who always sacrificed. She was going to be the one who stood firm. That the sun dipped below the horizon, and the sky turned purple. Eleanor sat in the gathering darkness and let herself feel the weight of what she had done. It was not the heavy weight of guilt. It was the lighter weight of freedom. She heard her phone buzz from inside the house. She did not get up to check it. She knew who it was. She knew what it said. But she was not going to respond. Not tonight. Tonight she was going to sit on her porch, watch the stars come out, and let herself be proud that she had done the hard thing. She had said the word she had never been able to say before. No. And it had felt like the beginning of something new. That the waves kept rolling in, steady and eternal. Eleanor watched them and thought about the future. She thought about the negotiations with the bank. She thought about the loan and the pressure, and the long road ahead. She thought about Derek and Patricia and the grandchildren she had not seen in years. But she did not feel anxious. She did not feel afraid. She felt something closer to peace. That she had done the right thing. She had taken the first step. And no matter what happened next, she knew she could handle it. That she stood up and walked back inside. She locked the door behind her and went to the kitchen. She made herself a cup of tea and sat down at the table. She opened her journal again and wrote one more line. That I am not my son's safety net. I am my own woman. And I am just beginning to find out who that really is. She set down the pen and drank her tea. The night was quiet, the house was still. And for the first time in a very long time, Eleanor felt something she had almost forgotten, that she felt hope that the week after Derek's visit passed in a strange, suspended quiet. Eleanor went about her routines with a focus that surprised her. She painted the porch railing, planted the lavender she had been dreaming about, and walked the beach every morning with her shoes in her hand. But beneath the surface calm, something was shifting. She could feel it, a low hum of anticipation that kept her awake at night and made her coffee taste sharper in the morning. She had not heard from Derek since he had left. She had not expected to. He was nursing his wounded pride, she knew, trying to figure out his next move. But she also knew he would not stay silent for long. He was too desperate, and desperation had a way of overriding even the strongest ego. On Thursday, she received a call from her accountant, Margaret. The woman's voice was crisp and efficient, but there was an edge to it that Eleanor had not heard before. Eleanor, I've been looking into the loan guarantee. There's something you need to know. Eleanor sat down at the kitchen table. What is it? Your son didn't just take out one loan. He took out two. The second one was secured against a property that doesn't exist. Eleanor felt her stomach drop. What do you mean? According to the paperwork I've been able to access, Derek used a piece of real estate as collateral for a second loan. But that property was sold 3 years ago. The documentation he submitted was falsified. He created a paper trail for a property that no longer belonged to him. Eleanor closed her eyes. She felt the familiar ache in her chest, but it was different this time. It was not the ache of disappointment. It was the ache of a woman who had finally fully seen the truth. The second loan, she said. How much? 200,000. And it's in default. The bank is already moving to seize assets. They've frozen his primary accounts. He's been hiding this from you, Eleanor. He's been hiding it from everyone. Eleanor opened her eyes. She looked out the window at the ocean. The waves were calm, the sky was clear, and the world outside her window was peaceful. But inside her chest something was hardening. Thank you, Margaret. I need to think about this. Eleanor, you need to protect yourself. The guarantee you signed covers the first loan only. But if he's been committing fraud, there's no telling what else he's done. You need to talk to a lawyer. You need to make sure your assets are completely separate from his. I will, Eleanor said. I'll call you back. She hung up and sat in the silence. The truth was settling over her like a cold rain. She had known Derek was in trouble. She had known he was desperate. But she had not known, had not allowed herself to imagine, that he was capable of this. Fraud. Forgery. A trail of lies that led back to her signature, her trust, her willingness to believe the best in him. She thought about the dinner party invitation. She thought about the text message. She thought about the photograph Patricia had posted, the one with all the faces and no empty chair. And she realized, with a clarity that hurt, that the dinner party had been a distraction. A show. A way to make everything look normal while the walls were crumbling around them. That she had been excluded not because they didn't want her there, but because they didn't want her to see. They didn't want her to ask questions. They didn't want her to know that the foundation beneath their perfect life was rotting. She stood up from the table and walked to her bedroom. She opened the drawer where she kept her financial documents and pulled out the file marked Loan Guarantee. She read through it carefully, line by line. The signatures were hers. The dates were correct. But there was a second page she had never noticed before. A rider that extended the guarantee to any additional loans taken out within 5 years. That she had signed it without reading it. She had trusted her son. And he had used that trust to build a house of cards. She called her lawyer that afternoon. His name was Robert, a solid, no-nonsense man who had handled her affairs for years. She explained the situation, and he listened without interrupting. Eleanor, I'm going to be honest with you. This is serious. Your son has committed fraud, and if the banks pursue criminal charges, you could be implicated. You need to distance yourself from this as quickly as possible. Distance myself how? File a report. Make it clear that you were unaware of the second loan, and that you did not authorize its creation. Provide documentation showing that your signature on the rider was obtained without proper explanation. And most importantly, separate your finances from his completely. Eleanor nodded. Do it. Whatever needs to be done, do it. Are you sure this could have serious consequences for your son? Eleanor paused. She thought about Derek's face when he had visited her, the desperation in his eyes, the way he had looked like a man drowning. She thought about the years of sacrifices she had made for him, the years of telling herself that her patience would pay off. She thought about the text message and the dinner party and the photograph of all those faces around a table with no empty chair. I'm sure, she said. He made his choices. Now I'm making mine. She hung up and sat in the quiet of her house. The sun was beginning to set, and the light was golden on the walls. She felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt like she was taking control. The next morning, she received a text message from Derek. It was short and cold. We need to talk. I'll be there at noon. Eleanor did not respond. She spent the morning in her garden, her hands in the soil, her mind quiet. She was not nervous. She was not anxious. She was ready. Derek arrived at exactly noon. He did not knock this time. He walked in as if he owned the place, his face set in a hard mask of determination. He was wearing another expensive suit, and his hair was perfectly combed, but Eleanor could see the cracks beneath the surface. His hands were shaking. His jaw was tight. Sit down, she said. She was standing by the kitchen table, her arms crossed as he sat. He did not ask for water this time. He did not try to make small talk. He looked at her with eyes that were hard and desperate. Mother, I need to know what you've done. I've been getting calls from the bank. They're saying you've filed a report. They're saying you're trying to distance yourself from the loans. Is that true? Yes, Eleanor said. It's true. Derek's face went pale. How could you do that? You're signing my death warrant. I'm protecting myself, Eleanor said. You didn't tell me about the second loan. You didn't tell me you were using falsified documents. You didn't tell me any of it. You let me sign a guarantee that could have ruined me. Derek's composure cracked. I didn't have a choice. I was desperate. The business was failing, and I didn't know what else to do. So you lied to me. You committed fraud. You put everything I have at risk. Mother, please. I'm your son. You're supposed to help me. Eleanor looked at him. She saw the man she had raised, the man she had sacrificed so much for. And she felt something she had never felt before in his presence. She felt done. I have helped you, she said. I've helped you your whole life. I gave you everything I had. I drained my retirement fund for your down payment. I signed loans I didn't fully understand. I sacrificed my own future so you could have yours. And what did you do with it? Derek opened his mouth but no words came out. You built a life and then you burned it down. And instead of telling me the truth, instead of asking for help in a way that was honest, you hid it. You lied. You manipulated. You used me. Mother, I'm not finished, she said. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. You texted me to stay away from your dinner party. You told me the headcount was final. You let me believe I was being included, and then you shut the door in my face. And you expected me to just take it. You expected me to keep giving. Derek looked down at his hands. He could not meet her eyes. I'm not going to rescue you from this, Eleanor said. I'm not going to sell my house. I'm not going to liquidate my investments. I'm not going to give you a single cent. What I am going to do is help you find a way out that doesn't involve dragging me down with you. There's no other way, Derek said. His voice was thick. There's no other way. There's always another way, Eleanor said. You just don't want to see it. She walked to the counter and picked up a folder. She had prepared it that morning, her hands steady, her mind clear. She set it on the table in front of him. In there, you'll find the name of a financial advisor who specializes in debt restructuring. You'll find a list of lawyers who handle cases like yours. You'll find resources that can help you figure out how to fix this without destroying everything I've built. Derek stared at the folder. He did not open it. I'm not going to do your work for you, Eleanor said. I'm not going to fix your mistakes. But I am going to give you the tools to fix them yourself. That's what I should have done a long time ago. That's what I'm going to do now. Derek looked up at her. His eyes were wet. You're really going to let me fall? I'm going to let you learn to stand, Eleanor said. There's a difference. He sat there for a long moment. Then he reached out and took the folder. He opened it and looked at the papers inside. He did not say anything. "I'm not going to write you off," Eleanor said. "You're still my son. But you're not going to get what you want by making me feel guilty. You're not going to get what you want by manipulating me. Those days are over." Derek nodded slowly. He looked like a man who was finally, truly, seeing the woman in front of him for the first time. "I'm sorry," he said. The words came out rough and broken. "I'm sorry for everything. For the text message. For the dinner party. For all of it. I was wrong. I was so wrong." Eleanor felt something shift in her chest. It was not forgiveness, not yet. But it was something. It was the beginning of a door, opened a cracked. "Thank you," she said. "That means something." Derek stood up. He looked at her with eyes that were tired but clearer than they had been in weeks. "I'll call the advisor. I'll talk to the lawyers. I'll figure this out." "I know you will," Eleanor said. "And if you need advice, I'm here. But I'm not going to fix it for you. You have to do the work." He nodded. He walked to the door, and this time he paused. He turned back to look at her. "Mother," he said. "I love you." "I know," she said. "I love you too." He left. Eleanor stood in the kitchen and watched him drive away. She felt tired, but it was a different kind of tired. It was the tiredness of a woman who had just done something hard and right. She sat down at the table and opened her journal. She picked up her pen and wrote. He apologized. He finally apologized. "I don't know if it's enough. I don't know if it changes anything. But it's a start. It's a beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like we might be able to find our way back to each other. Not as the mother who gives and the son who takes, but as something different. Something more equal. Something real." She closed the journal and looked out the window. The ocean was there, steady and eternal. She thought about the road ahead, the long process of rebuilding trust, the work that still needed to be done. She had no idea what would happen next. She had no idea if Derek would follow through on his promises. She had no idea if she would ever fully trust him again, but she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer the woman who had received that text message. She was no longer the woman who waited by the phone, hoping for scraps of attention. She was no longer the woman who sacrificed everything for someone who could not see her. She was Eleanor. She was standing on her own. And she was ready for whatever came next. The sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Eleanor sat on her porch and watched the colors fade into night. She felt the cool breeze on her face and the warmth in her heart. She was not alone. She had herself. And that was enough. The weeks that followed Derek's apology were quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar to Eleanor. She had spent so many years bracing for the next crisis, the next demand, the next disappointment, that the absence of tension left her feeling almost untethered. She walked the beach each morning, tended her garden, and continued her pottery classes, but there was a part of her that kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. It did not drop. Instead, a letter arrived. It was from Derek, handwritten on plain paper, not the expensive stationery Patricia favored. Eleanor recognized his handwriting immediately, but there was something different about it. The letters were smaller, more careful, as if he had taken his time with each word. She opened it in the kitchen, standing by the counter with the morning light streaming through the window. The letter was longer than she expected, and it was not about money. "Dear Mother," it began. "I have been thinking a lot about what you said. About learning to stand on my own. About fixing my own problems. I have spent the past month doing exactly that. I met with the financial advisor you recommended. I have been working with a lawyer to address the loan issues. It has been hard, and I have wanted to give up more times than I can count, but I haven't. Because you were right. I need to learn to stand." Eleanor felt a warmth spread through her chest. She kept reading. "There is something else I need to tell you. Patricia and I have separated. It was my decision, and it was the hardest thing I have ever done. But being with her made me someone I did not want to be. She encouraged the distance between us. She made me believe that you were a burden, a problem to be managed, instead of the mother who gave me everything. I let her do that. I let myself be convinced. And I am so sorry." Eleanor set the letter down. She looked out the window at the ocean, her hands trembling slightly. She had not expected this. She had not expected Derek to take responsibility, not in this way, not with so much honesty. She picked up the letter and continued reading. I have moved out of the house. I am living in a small apartment near the office. It is not what I am used to and it is not easy, but it is honest. I am starting to understand what it means to build something on my own. I am starting to understand what you gave up for me, all those years, and I do not know if I will ever be able to repay you. But I want to try. I have also been thinking about the children. They are with Patricia right now, and I am fighting for visitation. I do not want to lose them the way I lost you. I do not want to be the kind of father who is only present when it is convenient. I want to be better. I want to be the man you raised me to be. Please do not feel like you have to respond to this. I know I have no right to ask for anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I am trying. I am finally trying. Eleanor read the letter twice more. She felt tears prick at her eyes. Not of sadness but of something she could not name. It was not relief. It was not joy. It was something deeper, something that felt like the beginning of healing. That she set the letter down and walked out onto the porch. The morning was clear and bright, the ocean calm and blue. She sat in her usual chair and let the warmth of the sun settle over her. She thought about the years of sacrifice. She thought about the text message and the dinner party and the photograph with no empty chair. She thought about the long, lonely years of waiting for something that never came. And then she thought about Derek's letter. About the words he had written, the effort he was making, the man he was trying to become. She was not ready to forgive him completely. She was not ready to pretend the past had not happened. But she was ready to acknowledge that he was trying. And that, she realized, was a beginning. She went back inside and sat down at the kitchen table. She opened her journal and wrote. Derek wrote me a letter. He told me he is separated from Patricia. He told me he is working on himself. He told me he is sorry. I do not know if it will last. I do not know if he will stay the course. But for the first time, I believe that he wants to try. And that is enough for now. She closed the journal and picked up her phone. She had not called Derek in months. She had not reached out at all. But something about the letter made her want to take a step forward. She dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. Mother, his voice was hesitant, almost nervous. Derek, she said. I got your letter. There was a pause. I wasn't sure you would read it. I read it. And I wanted to call you and tell you that I appreciate it. I appreciate what you said. I appreciate that you're trying. Thank you, he said. His voice cracked slightly. That means more than you know. I'm not ready to pretend everything is fine, Eleanor said. But I am ready to start talking again. If you want that. I want that more than anything, Derek said. I want to rebuild our relationship. I want to be the son you deserve. I know it won't happen overnight, but I'm willing to put in the work. Eleanor smiled. It was a small smile, but it was genuine. Then let's start. Tell me about your apartment. Tell me about the children. Tell me about what you've been doing. And so they talked. For the first time in years, they talked like mother and son. Derek told her about his new apartment, small and sparse but his own. He told her about his visits with the children, the awkwardness of seeing them without Patricia there, the effort he was making to be present. He told her about the work he was doing on his business, the long hours, the slow progress. Eleanor listened. She did not interrupt. She did not offer advice unless he asked. She just listened, and that was enough. When they finally hung up, Eleanor felt lighter than she had in years. She walked out onto the porch and stood in the afternoon sun. The ocean was sparkling, the waves rolling in with their steady rhythm. She felt a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. But the peace was not to last. 3 days later, Eleanor received another letter. This one was from Patricia. The envelope was cream-colored and heavy. The same stationery Patricia had used for the dinner party invitation. Eleanor opened it with a sense of foreboding. Eleanor, the letter began. I am writing to you because I believe we need to have an honest conversation. I know that you and Derek have been in contact, and I know that he has told you about our separation. I also know that he has painted me as the villain in this story. But I want you to know the truth. Eleanor read on. Patricia's letter was long and detailed. filled with accusations and justifications. She claimed Derek had been the one who distanced himself from Eleanor. She claimed he had made the decision to exclude her from the dinner party. She claimed he had manipulated the situation from the beginning. "I am not the monster he has made me out to be," Patricia wrote. "I have always tried to be a good wife and a good mother. I have tried to protect my family. Derek has made mistakes, but so have I. And I believe that we need to move forward with honesty, not blame." Eleanor set the letter down. She felt a familiar ache in her chest, the old tug of conflicting loyalties. She had known Patricia for years. She had never fully trusted her, but she had never disliked her either. She had simply accepted her as part of Derek's life. Now she was being asked to choose sides. And she was not sure she wanted to. She thought about Derek's letter. She thought about his apology, his willingness to take responsibility, his effort to rebuild. She thought about Patricia's letter, her defensiveness, her refusal to acknowledge her own role in what had happened, as she did not want to be the judge. She did not want to be the one who decided who was right and who was wrong. She wanted to be done with the drama, done with the manipulation, done with being pulled in different directions. She picked up her phone and called Derek. He answered quickly. "Mother, what's wrong?" "I received a letter from Patricia," Eleanor said. "She's trying to explain her side of things. She's trying to blame you." Derek was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice tired but even. "I'm not going to defend myself to you. I don't want to make you choose between us. You've been through enough. If you want to believe her, that's your choice." "I don't want to believe anyone," Eleanor said. "I want to move forward. I want to focus on what matters. And what matters is you and me, and the grandchildren. Nothing else." Derek exhaled slowly. "Thank you. That means a lot." "I'm not going to let Patricia drag me into her drama," Eleanor said. "I'm done being a pawn. I'm done being used. I'm going to live my life, and I'm going to build a relationship with you. And I'm going to do it on my terms." "I understand," Derek said. "And I respect that." They talked for a little while longer, about nothing important. The weather, the garden, the pottery class Eleanor had been taking. It was ordinary and easy, and that was exactly what Eleanor needed. When she hung up, she went to the kitchen and made herself a cup of tea. She sat down at the table and looked at Patricia's letter. She read it one more time, and then she folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. She would not respond. She would not engage. She would not let Patricia pull her into a battle. She did not want to fight. She walked out onto the porch and sat in her usual chair. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. She watched the colors shift and deepen, and she thought about the road ahead. She was not sure what the future would bring. She was not sure if Derek would stay on the path he had started. She was not sure if she would ever fully trust him again. But she was sure of one thing, that she was done letting other people define her life. She was done being the one who gave and gave and gave. She was done feeling guilty for having boundaries. That she was Eleanor. She had made her choices. And she was ready for whatever came next. That the waves rolled in, steady and eternal. Eleanor watched them until the light faded and the stars came out. She felt the cool breeze on her face and the warmth in her heart. She had come a long way from that kitchen table, staring at a text message. She had come a long way from the woman who waited by the phone, hoping for crumbs of attention. That she was not that woman anymore. She was something stronger, something freer. She was a woman who had finally learned to stand on her own. And that, she knew, was the most powerful thing she could be. The letter arrived on a Thursday, slipped through the mail slot with the usual assortment of bills and catalogs. Eleanor almost missed it, tucked as it was between a flyer for a local seafood restaurant and a notice about property taxes. But something about the envelope caught her eye. It was pale blue, the color of a winter sky, and it was addressed in handwriting she did not recognize. She opened it standing in the hallway, the afternoon light falling across her shoulder. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. The note was brief, written in a flowing hand. "Dear Eleanor, I hope this finds you well. I have been thinking about you and the house by the sea. It has been many years, but I still remember the summer we spent there, the two of us, before everything changed. I would like to see you again if you are willing. I will be in the coastal town next week, staying at the inn on Harbor Street. Please call if you would like to meet. With love, your sister, Margaret. Eleanor read the note twice. Her hands were trembling. She had not spoken to her sister Margaret in over 30 years. They had been close once, as close as sisters could be, but a bitter falling out over their mother's estate had driven them apart. Eleanor had tried to reach out several times over the years, but Margaret had never responded. She had assumed the rift was permanent as she walked to the kitchen and set the note on the table. She sat down and looked at it, the pale blue paper, the familiar handwriting. She remembered the summer Margaret had mentioned, the one they had spent at this very house, their aunt's house, when they were both young women. They had walked the beach every morning, talked late into the night, shared secrets and dreams. It had been a golden time, a time before the weight of adulthood had settled on their shoulders. She had not thought about that summer in years. She had been so focused on her own life, her own disappointments, that she had let the memory fade. But now it came rushing back, vivid and warm, that she picked up the phone and called the inn on Harbor Street. She asked for Margaret's room and waited, her heart beating faster than it had in years. Hello, the voice on the other end was older, softer, but unmistakable. Margaret, Eleanor said. It's Eleanor. There was a pause, a sharp intake of breath. Eleanor. I wasn't sure you would call. I almost didn't, Eleanor admitted. But I read your note, and I couldn't stop thinking about that summer. About the house. About us. I've thought about it too, Margaret said. More than you know. I've wanted to reach out so many times, but I didn't know how. I didn't know if you would want to hear from me. Eleanor felt tears prick at her eyes. I always wanted to hear from you. I never stopped wanting that. They talked for an hour, then two. They talked about the past and the present, about the things that had driven them apart, and the things that had brought them back together. Margaret told Eleanor about her life, her career, her own disappointments and triumphs. Eleanor told Margaret about Derek, about the text message, about the journey she had been on. Your son, Margaret said. He hurt you badly. He did, Eleanor agreed. But he's trying to make it right. And I'm learning to let go of the past. That's a hard thing to do. It is, Eleanor said. But I'm getting better at it. They made plans to meet the next day. Eleanor spent the evening in a state of nervous anticipation. She laid out her clothes, the navy dress she had bought for the dinner party she had never attended. It felt right to wear it now, to reclaim it for something good. The next morning, she drove to the inn on Harbor Street. It was a charming old building, painted white with blue shutters, overlooking the harbor. She parked and walked inside, her heart pounding. Margaret was waiting in the lobby. She was older, her hair silver now, her face lined with the years. But her eyes were the same, warm and sharp and full of life. She stood up when Eleanor walked in. And for a moment they just looked at each other. Then Margaret crossed the room and pulled Eleanor into a hug. It was a long hug, the kind that said more than words ever could. I missed you, Margaret whispered. I missed you too. Eleanor said that they went for a walk along the harbor. The same walk they had taken so many times that long ago summer. The water was calm, the sun was warm, and the air was filled with the scent of salt and seaweed. They talked about everything and nothing, the easy flow of conversation that comes with true connection. I never stopped loving you, Margaret said. Even when I was angry. Even when I couldn't bring myself to call. I always loved you. Eleanor squeezed her sister's hand. I know. I always knew. They stopped at a small cafe overlooking the water and ordered coffee. Margaret reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph, faded and worn at the edges. It was a picture of the two of them, young and laughing, standing on the beach in front of their aunt's house. I found this the other day, Margaret said. I thought you might want it. Eleanor took the photograph and looked at it. She remembered that day, the bright sun, the sound of the waves, the feeling of being young and free. She had been so full of hope then, so sure that the future would be bright. I was so naive, she said. That maybe, Margaret said. But you were also brave. You always were. Eleanor looked at her sister. I don't feel brave. I feel like I spent most of my life letting people walk all over me. You let them, Margaret said. But you also stopped. That's the brave part. That's the part that matters. Eleanor thought about the text message. She thought about the dinner party. She thought about the years of giving, and the moment she had finally said no. She thought about Derek's letter and his apology, his slow, uncertain steps toward change. She thought about Patricia's letter, the one she had put in the drawer and never responded to. She thought about her aunt's house, the one she was living in now, the one that had become her sanctuary. She thought about the pottery she had made, the garden she had planted, the life she had built from the ashes of the one she had left behind. She thought about the words she had written in her journal, the ones that had changed everything. I am not my son's safety net. I am my own woman. And I am just beginning to find out who that really is. Margaret, she said. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you regret the years we lost? Margaret was quiet for a long moment. She looked out at the water, her expression thoughtful. I regret them every day, she said finally. But I also believe that everything happens for a reason. Maybe we needed that time apart. Maybe we needed to grow into the people we are now, so we could find our way back to each other. Eleanor nodded. She understood. She had needed the time apart from Derek. She had needed the distance to see clearly, to find her own strength, to learn to stand on her own. And now she was ready to rebuild on her own terms. Can I tell you something? Margaret said. Anything. I've been thinking about moving here. To the coastal town. I'm retired now and I've been looking for a change of scenery. And when I thought about this place, I thought about you. I thought about the possibility of us being sisters again, really being sisters. Living near each other. Sharing our lives. Eleanor felt her heart swell. You want to move here? I want to be near you, Margaret said. If that's something you would want too. Eleanor reached across the table and took her sister's hand. I would love that. I would love nothing more. They finished their coffee and walked back to the inn. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the harbor. Eleanor felt a sense of peace she had not felt in years. She had come so far from that kitchen table, staring at a text message that had broken her heart. She had rebuilt herself piece by piece and she was stronger for it. She drove home in the fading light, her heart full. She parked in the driveway and walked up to the house. She paused on the porch and looked out at the ocean. The waves were rolling in, steady and eternal. Just as they always had been, she went inside and walked to the kitchen. She opened the drawer where she kept her journals and pulled out the first one, the one she had started writing the day she arrived. She flipped through the pages, reading her own words, tracing the arc of her journey. She stopped at the last entry, the one she had written after Derek's visit. She read it again, the words she had written in the quiet of her kitchen. I am not my son's safety net. I am my own woman. And I am just beginning to find out who that really is. She smiled. She closed the journal and put it back in the drawer. She walked to the counter and picked up the navy dress, the one she had bought for the dinner party. She had not worn it that night, but she had kept it. She had thought about getting rid of it, but something had held her back. Now she understood. She had kept it as a reminder of who she had been and who she had become. She hung the dress back in the closet, next to the dress she had bought for Margaret's visit tomorrow. She would wear it to dinner, she decided. She would wear it and she would be proud that she walked out onto the porch and sat in her usual chair. The stars were coming out, one by one, bright against the darkening sky. She thought about the text message that had changed everything. She thought about the dinner party she had never attended. She thought about the empty chair that had taught her so much. She did not need a seat at that table anymore. She had built her own table, here by the sea, with her sister and her memories and her quiet, stubborn strength. The waves rolled in, steady and eternal. Eleanor watched them, and felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had come to the end of one journey and the beginning of another. And she was ready for whatever came next. She was Eleanor. She was whole. She was free. And she was just beginning.